millions more, the resilience of the African people shines through. But it's not been easy. So what is driving these conflicts? And are there any signs of an end in sight in 2025? That's what's coming up. I am Eddy Micah Jr., and you are welcome to Africa Link, the podcast connecting you to the stories that matter.
Africa Link, every weekday here on DW.
For decades, the mineral-rich east of DRC has suffered the impact of fighting between local and foreign armed groups. This dates back to the regional wars of the 1990s. Not too far away is Cameroon, another Central African state. Since 2016, the country has been gripped by a bloody conflict in its two anglophone regions, in the northwest and southwest, between separatists and state forces. The conflict was sparked by the brutal suppression of peaceful protests in the anglophone regions by longtime President Paul Biya. Let's connect with two individuals who know more about the topic than I do. Ivan Mugisha is a social-political commentator on the Greatlakes region, and Jean-Marie Ngong is DW's correspondent in Bamenda, Cameroon. Ivan, first, help us with this. Which countries in the Greatlakes region have faced the most challenges this year, 2024?
Thank you very much for having me. So the Greatlakes has had a lot of challenges. All countries have had challenges. I can't point out a particular country, but three countries easy to pick out. DRC has had a very difficult year, especially in the eastern part, where there's hundreds of rebel groups that are operating there. Some are being supported by regional countries, allegedly, such as Rwanda, Uganda, Burundi, and they've caused insurmountable violence, displacement of people, women and children are being killed. And that problem has existed for a very long time, and it has been difficult for the DRC government to win it out. Uganda, on the other hand, has also had issues concerning oppression of the opposition. Opposition leader Kizza Besigye is right now in jail on treason charges. He was arrested in a neighboring country in Kenya, where he had gone for a meeting. The other opposition leader, Bobi Wine, also cannot have an open meeting without being tear gassed or beaten up or his people being fired at. So yes, those are big problems within the Greatlakes region. Rwanda, where I live, is also having issues. So many reports are coming out. The Human Rights Watch, Amnesty International, UN, the US Department of State all point to the fact to allegations of abuse of human rights in Rwanda, lack of political space. We also have a big problem right now that has persisted for a long time. That's rising inflation. Zero ways of trying to curb it. We have a very big issue with the lack of exports, help curb inflation. And the media is also not talking about it because the media is not as free as maybe other parts of the world. So this is a problem that is existing in Rwanda, and there seems to be no way to solve it, with the Rwandan franc losing value literally every single day.
That's an interesting breakdown, and I wish we could talk about all these countries deeply. We would want to hammer on the DRC. It feels almost like deja vu, because every year we talk about conflicts inside the Democratic Republic of Congo, which you have touched on. Has this year been any different? In which way, if it has?
This year, the only way it has been different is it even getting worse. The Eastern DRC question has got worse, with actors all being on different pages of the equation. No one wants to. No one seems to want to solve the problem or have a solution to the problem. When you look at the rebel group that has been the main focus of the attention right now, the M23 rebel group, which is allegedly being supported by Rwanda and the Rwandan military, has captured lots of land within Eastern DRC, displaced people. So many people are dying. And as we speak right now, talks between Rwanda and DRC, peace talks, have died out because the Rwandan President Paul Kagame and his counterpart Felix Tshisekedi have failed to agree. The last time there was a meeting, President Paul Kagame refused to attend the meeting because he felt that the DRC government was not willing to negotiate, to sit on the table and negotiate with the M23 rebel group. So the talks have fallen apart, and that points to the fact that since the beginning of this year in January, there's been wars in Eastern DRC. If you come to Rwanda right now and see how many refugees have come into Rwanda, basically people being displaced, coming into the country with bullet wounds, yes, the DRC issue has failed, and you could blame basically the leaders of the region as well as the UN for failing to curb this problem.
Right. So what really is the fighting about? Can you sort of give us a gist or summary of why there's fighting going on in the DRC and why so many stakeholders are involved?
So yes, the M23 rebel group is saying that its people who are largely the Tutsi community in Eastern DRC have their rights being violated by the leaders of the DRC, and the group is asking for its people to have their rights reinstated, and they also want a position within the military of the DRC to be recognized. By the DRC government. The DRC government has categorically called the M23 rebel group a terrorist group, and is saying they will not negotiate with them. Last time there was a meeting, the Minister of Foreign Affairs for Rwanda insisted that the DRC had initially agreed to have peace talks or to negotiate with the M23 rebel group so they can come to an understanding. But the DRC government has said at any one point they never agreed to negotiate with the M23, and they want them to disarm, and then they give up fighting. So this whole debacle has refused to end, and the actor who is supposed to be neutral, that's the UN, the MONUSCO group, is nowhere near the talks because none of the parties trust them. Rwanda thinks that the MONUSCO group is supporting the DRC government, and now there's also the entrant of mercenaries from Eastern Europe who have come into at the request of the DRC government to help fight the M23, who are also causing another whole debacle in the fight. So as we speak right now, there seems to be no way forward. The people are the ones that are suffering, the women, the children, and the men. Yeah,
as is always the case, when two elephants fight, it's the grass that suffers, isn't it? And
absolutely.
And there are some experts that are weighing in, saying part of this fighting is basically fighting for the vast wealth of natural resources that is in the DRC. What are your thoughts on that?
There is definitely arguments to prove that. As we speak right now, the DRC government is suing Apple, and this has to do with minerals on the ground. The DRC is a vastly rich country. It has literally all minerals, just like South Africa, probably even richer than South Africa. They have cassiterite, which is used to make phones. They have coltan. They have all these many important minerals that you need to make gadgets that are being sold on the market everywhere in the world. So it's a struggle for these companies. Are all operating, have proxies operating within the Eastern DRC, getting so many minerals that are not even being traced. You could call them blood minerals. It's possible that the DRC conflict has been elongated by the fact that there's so many players who are willing to have the conflict go on simply because they benefit from getting cheap minerals from the area.
Right, which for sure further complicates the ongoing conflict. So we will soon cross over to Cameroon to get the gist of what's been going on, especially in the anglophone regions or the English-speaking regions. But before that, talking about the DRC, a country that has been prominently alleged to be involved is Rwanda, as you also mentioned yourself. Rwandan authorities have previously publicly denied that their troops were operating alongside M23 rebels in North Kivu, but several Western countries, including the US, think otherwise. What do you think?
Thank you. Rwanda was at the start of this whole debacle categorically denying their involvement in support of the M23 rebel groups, but the denial has toned down, most probably because there is a lot of evidence to show that Rwanda actually might be supporting the M23 rebel groups. The U.S. Department of State, the UN, DRC, some images prove that probably the Rwandan army is in fact helping out the M23 rebel group to have strength, and they're also defending them with lots of weaponry to fight against the FRDC. That's the DRC army.
But just to be clear, President Paul Kagame, Rwanda's president, still as it stands denies it.
I don't think he has said we are not supporting the M23.
He hasn't denied it. He has not accepted that he's involved in the conflict, has he?
Previously, it was a categorical denial. It was very strict. We are not supporting the M23. Previously, the president would say there is no evidence that we're supporting the M23, but if we were supporting the M23, there would be reason for doing that. And as we speak right now, Rwanda is basically was negotiating before the fall of the peace talks. Rwanda was negotiating with the M20 with the DRC government. That points to the fact that why would Rwanda be the one to be negotiating with the DRC government and not say Uganda or Burundi? So the whole reason it's no longer a doubt that Rwanda is supporting the M23. It's more of a denial, but all the evidence is there. If you read the last U.S. Department of State statement where they were asking Rwanda to categorically stop providing surface-to-air missiles to support the M23 and asking them to pull out their troops from the DRC. These are all signs that definitely Rwanda could be in the DRC, although Rwanda somehow still denies the fact that they are in the DRC.
Right. Talks between DRC President Felix Tshisekedi and his Rwandan counterpart Paul Kagame failed on various occasions in 2024. You touched on that a bit. How committed are the two leaders to the peace process, you think?
I think the biggest problem, as you said, when two elephants fight, is the grass that suffers. So I believe, from what I've seen from how this conflict has panned out, I believe that both actors believe in their cause way too much to cede any ground. None of the two leaders is willing to sacrifice for the sake of peace. They're both willing to just refuse to agree on something and maybe for the sake of peace decide to have all these rebel groups out of Eastern DRC. So I believe that we don't have any good faith from both leaders to serve the cause of peace. If you look at President Tshisekedi when he had just come into power, him and President Paul Kagame looked like they were headed towards becoming best friends. Both of them were praising each other. President Tshisekedi visited Rwanda. First country he visited was Rwanda when he had just become president. He was looked at as a pacifier. He was praised by President Kagame as a new leader who looks at pacifying the region. Tshisekedi invited President Paul Kagame to come and help end the conflict in Eastern DRC. Then suddenly it all fell apart. Both leaders can't look eye to eye now. They're enemies of each other. They keep sending insults towards each other. I think there's not good faith coming from either party. They're all looking at each other and looking at personal goals rather than looking at regional peace.
So you're basically saying that the relationship currently between the two leaders has worsened, which spells doom for the continuation of the conflict then?
Absolutely. I believe, and this culminated especially a couple of weeks ago when peace talks completely died out, with Angola being the moderator of the peace talks. When President Paul Kagame refused to attend the peace talks, that was pretty much the end of the line that we were holding to have at least some peace coming to the eastern part of DRC. Now, there is a possibility of threat of war. These two countries fighting it out, and this is not a good look.
So interesting what we're talking about that I'm almost forgetting about Jean-Marie Ngong, our correspondent in Cameroon. So Jean-Marie, let's switch sides to Cameroon, where conflicts in the English-speaking regions have resulted in significant loss of life and displacement. Can you briefly remind us what the conflict is about?
Well, Eddy, thank you. The anglophone crisis, as it has now been called, started in 2016 when anglophone teachers complained of the government trying to threaten the anglophone subsystem of education by transferring francophone teachers. They complained that francophone teachers were teaching in the French language, and then the government had to call for a strike action. It was later on joined by the anglophone lawyers who called for better reforms and better working conditions in the jurisdictic sector. They asked for the translation of some documents and the transfer of French-speaking magistrates. Later on, the civil society moved in, and before we could know it, it was turned bloody and degenerated into an armed conflict way back in 2017 until today. The conflict has continued to drag on, Eddy.
So in summary, it's basically two regions who speak French and English, and both sides, or in this case, especially the English-speaking side, feeling a bit left out of the national cake and are demanding some sort of autonomy and some sort of power from the government. And this, in a sense, is what the fighting is about. Did I sort of get the gist of it?
Exactly, Eddie, exactly.
Right. So 2024 has not been an easy year for people in the Anglophone region. What have you been reporting on so far in 2024?
In 2024, I've been reporting about gun battles, frequent gun battles. We have been reporting about confrontations between separatist fighters and government army. We have been reporting about ghost towns. We have been reporting about the economic meltdown of the two regions, stagnation, hardship, misery. We've been reporting of family separation. We're reporting a lot of internally, and we've been reporting on thousands of deaths, Eddie.
Which is really sad to hear. I mean, we're talking about a conflict that has been going on for almost 8 years. You know, civilians are always caught in between such conflicts. It's the same that we had, you know, talking about the DRC. How do people manage their individual security and cope day by day with a conflict like this going on in the English-speaking regions?
Individuals who have lived the crisis and have survived so far for the 8 years have adopted local security strategies, like you put a call across to the destination or to the other side of the town that you intend to visit. You call to find out if it is safe before you leave home. Events organized by politicians, individuals make sure that if it is not necessary, they don't attend such events. And then military checkpoints, you have, if you are passing by, you have to pass very fast because there might be an unannounced confrontation. You also make sure to avoid areas where separatists use as routes. That is how individuals in the Anglophone region they have come to be surviving the crisis so far, because there's supposed to be a confrontation. The two parties do not make an announcement or any kind of an alert. So individuals have to take their own security individually.
And just again, to be very clear, when you talk about the two parties or the two sides, let's be clear, which sides are we talking about?
We're talking about the separatists here who are fighting in the two Anglophone regions. They're wanting for outright secession from the Francophone section of the country, which is the government. So the two parties involved is the Cameroon army, and the other part separatist fighters.
Right. Thanks for that clarity. And I'm sure people now get the picture. Unfortunately, one major sector that has been most affected by the crisis has been the educational sector. What is happening to schools and school kids?
At the moment, only at the city centers that we have a few government schools going operational. In the divisions, are in the larger part of the Anglophone regions. But majority of the schools that are operational are lay confession by the missionaries. I'm here talking of the Catholic Church, the Presbyterian Church, the Baptist, and all and that. And then the private institutions owned by sole proprietors. 90%, I would say, of government institutions, which used to be the favorite in the past before the crisis, are not functional. There's also a new form of culture that has set in. School kids who now go to school without uniforms. They wear only their fashionable clothes to school for security, because you don't know who you can meet on the road. So there's a new culture, the disappearance of school uniforms in Anglophone regions, and then the emergence or the dominance of lay, private, and conventional schools becoming powerful and dominant instead of government schools.
Right. Rather unfortunate, again, that kids and their future is being targeted by this ongoing conflict. So are there any signs at all that the conflict may soon come to an end?
Every day that goes by comes with a new phase or a new momentum in the crisis. At one moment, you would think that in 1 or 2 months, the crisis will come to an end. And just before a twinkle of an eye, the crises are back. And we were talking at the time that even we're talking about end of year, where we are at the end of the year. And the way it started, many people thought that maybe by December, I would have seen a die down in momentum. But 3 months ago, we saw the intensification of attacks, especially in the streets of Bamenda, confrontations, use of improvised explosives gained dominance. Frequent gun battles became a daily kind of a thing. And then we also saw more lockdowns, more ghost towns multiplying. So there seems to be no any sight at the moment, Eddie.
That's a rather grim picture to paint. You've been talking to people on the ground, and while it seems there's no end in sight, how hopeful are people in the region that 2025, could maybe be a better year? What can we expect in 2025 based on what people are telling you?
People are saying that since 2025 will be an election year in Cameroon, the Cameroonians will be going to the polls to elect a new president. We expect to see more miserable moments in 2025, given that politicians will penetrate the divisions and the interior to send across their campaign messages. So people know that next year will be more bloodier than this year, because since the crisis started, each time there's an election, like a presidential election next year, is going to be more worse, because separatists want to use the moment as well to show that they're in control.
Now, let's wrap up from your side, Ivan. You've been a go-to person on the DRC, talking about the ongoing conflict there. Should we be optimistic in any way about 2025, or is it still to be expected to be all gloom and doom?
Thank you, Eddie. I don't know. I think normally, as I'm a very optimistic person, so I believe we should be optimistic, of course, but the reality defines that there is still a lot of work to do. A couple of weeks ago, what we needed was a peace talk between President Paul Kagame and President Felix Tshisekedi, and that just didn't happen. Towards the end of the year, what you're looking for is some hope, and all the hope just died out in a couple of weeks, 3 weeks ago. The reality on the ground shows that there's going to be even more chaos in Eastern DRC. There's going to be more fighting, because right now there's no peace talks, there's no disarmament of the rebel groups, there's more countries getting involved. The UN group has been trying to keep the peace in Eastern DRC, that's MONUSCO, has completely failed for all these years. And I think it's almost imperative to believe that they also have vested interests, because you cannot spend over $1 billion on a conflict as the UN and you keep a force there that has absolutely no accountability. We haven't heard of any official in the UN being tasked to explain how this conflict has continued to exist when there is a huge force of the UN in there. The most expensive peacekeeping force by the UN is in the Eastern DRC, and that has failed. If you just want to be hopeful, you can do that. But I believe that it's what the reality shows is this is even going to get worse, most probably.
I did not want to be the bearer of bad news, but it seems that's what we have done, facing the facts on the ground. And I guess we will keep our fingers crossed and hope that the different stakeholders and authorities will do all they can to ensure that innocent lives are saved and protected. We can only keep hope alive. Thank you very much, Ivan Mugisha, social political commentator on the Greatlakes region, and Jean-Marie Ngong, DW's correspondent in Bamenda, Cameroon. Thank you for your insights.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Eddie.
Africa is changing. Don't get left behind. Tune in to Africa Link.
The conflict in Cameroon alone has resulted in more than 6,000 deaths and displaced more than 1 million people. That's according to the International Crisis Group. But it's even worse in the DRC, where millions have been killed and displaced in almost 30 years of conflict. We can only hope that things get better against all odds. Your engagement is crucial in this discussion as we end this edition of Africa Link. Join the conversation on our Facebook page, DW Africa. Listen to us on Spotify or wherever you get your podcasts from. Click follow so you don't miss an episode. This show was co-produced and edited by Isaac Mugabe, and I am Eddy Micah Jr. Thanks for listening.